The auctioneer's voice echoed through the half-empty county courthouse, each word seeming to bounce off the walls like a cruel joke. Next item, Lot 47. Former Jenson Gem Cutting Workshop, Industrial Park Road. Property sold as is, structural damage, condemned by fire marshal. Starting bid, $1. Laughter rippled through the sparse crowd. Someone in the back muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, "You'd have to pay me to take that death trap." Sarah Chen sat in the third row, her daughter Lily pressed against her side, small fingers clutching the worn fabric of her mother's jacket.
If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today.
The 7-year-old had insisted on coming, had wanted to see the place that might, just might, change their lives. Now Sarah wished she'd left her at the neighbor's apartment, spared her this public humiliation that was about to unfold. "Do I hear $1? The auctioneer's tone carried that practiced boredom of a man who'd watched too many properties go for nothing. Sarah's hand trembled as she raised it. The movement felt both defiant and desperate, like every choice she'd made since Marcus left 3 years ago, taking their savings and leaving her with a daughter, mountains of debt, and the crushing weight of starting over at 32. "We have $1, the auctioneer said, not bothering to hide his surprise. "Any other bidders?" "Let her have it," called Dennis Horvath from the front row. He owned half the commercial properties in Riverside County, and his voice dripped with that particular cruelty reserved for those who kick people when they're already down. "Maybe the place will collapse on her, save the county demolition costs." More laughter. Sarah felt Lily's grip tighten. Going once, twice, the auctioneer's gavel hit wood with a sharp crack. "Sold to bidder 23 for $1. The room erupted in whispers, some pitying, most mocking. Sarah heard the words clearly, they weren't even trying to be discreet. "That's the Chen woman, works 3 jobs and still can't pay rent on time. Heard her car got repossessed last month. Poor kid, having a mother that stupid." Sarah stood, keeping her spine straight through sheer force of will. She'd learned in the 2 years since Marcus abandoned them that dignity was the only thing poverty couldn't quite steal, though it tried daily. She gathered Lily's hand and walked to the clerk's desk, every eye in the room tracking her movement like predators watching wounded prey. The processing fee came to $247.83. Sarah counted out the bills slowly, each one representing hours of work at the diner, at the grocery store, at the cleaning service where she scrubbed other people's toilets at 5 a.m. The clerk's expression shifted between pity and judgment as she processed the paperwork. "You know this place is condemned, right?" the clerk said, sliding the deed across the counter. "Structural engineer's report says the whole back section could collapse any day. Fire damage throughout. It's been sitting empty for 8 years since old Jenson died." "I know," Sarah whispered, taking the deed with hands that shook despite her best efforts to steady them. "There's asbestos, probably black mold, electrical wiring that's a fire hazard," the clerk continued, her voice dropping. "My cousin works for the city. They've been trying to get the Jenson estate to pay for demolition for years. That's why it went to auction for $1. You just inherited someone else's problem." Sarah folded the deed carefully, tucked it into her purse next to the final eviction notice from their landlord. "Thank you for your concern." Outside, November wind cut through her thin jacket. Lily looked up at her with those dark eyes that saw too much, understood too much for a 7-year-old. "Are we really going to live in a gem workshop, Mama?" "No, baby," Sarah said, kneeling to zip up Lily's coat, a hand-me-down from the church donation bin, 2 sizes too big. "But maybe we can sell the land. Even condemned land has to be worth something." "How much?" "Enough to pay rent for a few months. Enough to keep the lights on. Enough to buy you winter boots that actually fit. Enough, sweetheart. That's all that matters." They walked to the bus stop. Sarah's car had indeed been repossessed 3 weeks ago, and waited in the cold. The bus was late, as always. Sarah watched Lily's breath puff out in small clouds, tried not to think about the heating bill they couldn't pay, the empty refrigerator at home, the school lunch account that had been negative for 2 weeks until the principal quietly told her Lily would eat anyway. They'd work something out. The bus finally arrived, and they rode in silence through downtown Riverside. The buildings looked gray and tired in the fading afternoon light, as if the whole city was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen that never would. Sarah stared out the window, thinking about the gem workshop she'd just bought for $1. She'd driven past it once, 6 months ago, when a cleaning job had taken her to that part of town. The building had looked like something from a Gothic novel: dark stone, peaked roof partially caved in, windows boarded up with plywood that had itself weathered to silver. The sign out front still read Jenson Fine Gems in letters that had once been gold, now faded to the color of old brass. Thomas Jenson had been a master gem cutter, or so the obituary had said when Sarah Googled him after seeing the auction listing. He'd died at 93, leaving no heirs, no family, just a condemned workshop and a reputation for being eccentric. The article mentioned he'd worked with precious stones from all over the world, had learned his craft in Australia's opal fields before settling in Riverside in the 1960s. It also mentioned he'd gone bankrupt in 2015, losing everything in a series of bad investments. The workshop had sat empty since then, slowly deteriorating, becoming the kind of eyesore cities complained about but never quite got around to fixing. "Mama," Lily's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "The lady at school asked if we had Thanksgiving plans." Sarah's heart clenched. Thanksgiving was next week. She'd been trying not to think about it. "What did you tell her?" "I said we'd probably just have a quiet day, just us." Lily's voice was carefully neutral, that practiced tone Sarah recognized because she used it herself. The voice of someone trying not to want too much, trying not to be disappointed. "We'll do something special," Sarah said, though she had no idea what. Maybe the food bank would still have turkey donations. Maybe she could pick up an extra shift somewhere, scrape together enough for a small celebration. They got off the bus 3 blocks from their apartment building, a squat complex that had been temporary housing for 3 years now. The stairs smelled like old cigarettes and something indefinable but deeply unpleasant. Their unit was on the 3rd floor, number 317, with a door that stuck in a lock that required just the right combination of jiggling and force. Inside, the apartment was cold. Sarah had turned the heat down to the absolute minimum to save on the bill. Lily went immediately to her room, really just a corner of the studio partitioned off with a bookshelf and curtain, to do homework. Sarah stood in the kitchenette, staring at the nearly empty cupboards, trying to figure out what she could make for dinner from half a box of pasta and a can of tomato sauce that was 3 weeks past its expiration date. Her phone buzzed. A text from her supervisor at the diner: "Can you pick up Saturday morning shift? Amy called in sick." Sarah texted back immediately, yes. She needed every shift she could get, especially now that she'd just spent $247.83 on a building that was actively trying to fall down. Another text, this one from an unknown number: "This is Dennis Horvath. Got your number from the auction house. I'm prepared to offer you $500 for that gem workshop property. Cash deal, close tomorrow. Save you the headache of dealing with the city. $500. It would cover next month's rent with enough left over for groceries." Sarah stared at the message, thumb hovering over the reply button. Then she thought about Dennis's voice at the auction, the cruel amusement as he suggested the building might collapse on her. She thought about the way men like him operated, how they never offered more than they had to, how $500 probably meant the land was worth $5,000. Or $50,000. She typed, "Thank you for the offer. I need time to consider my options." His reply came back within seconds, "Don't wait too long. City's planning to fine owners of condemned properties. Daily fines add up fast. My offer drops to $300 if you wait past Friday." Threats wrapped in concern. Sarah had learned to recognize the pattern. She set the phone down without responding and started boiling water for the pasta. That night, after Lily was asleep, Sarah sat at their small table with the deed spread out before her, studying it by the light of a single lamp.
If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this.
The property description listed the gem workshop as sitting on 0.4 acres, including the main building and a smaller outbuilding described as a finishing studio. The address was 2847 Industrial Park Road, out past the old textile mills that had closed in the 1990s. She pulled up Google Maps on her phone, squinting at the satellite image. The workshop looked even more derelict from above, roof partially collapsed, surrounded by weeds and debris. But the lot itself was larger than she'd realized, backing up against what looked like a creek or drainage channel. Sarah opened a new browser tab and searched for Thomas Jenson Gem Cutter. The obituary came up again, along with a few old news articles. One from 1987 showed a younger Jenson holding up a massive opal, the stone catching light like trapped fire. The caption read, "Local craftsman creates masterpiece from Australian boulder opal worth estimated $50,000. Another article from 1992, Jenson's Gem Cutting Workshop expands, plans to train apprentices in traditional techniques. Then nothing until the bankruptcy filing in 2015. Whatever had happened to Thomas Jenson, whatever had taken him from success to ruin, had happened in those silent years between articles. Sarah's phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from her landlord, "Rent is 10 days late. Need payment by Friday or I'm filing eviction paperwork." She set the phone face down on the table, suddenly too exhausted to deal with one more crisis. The smart thing would be to take Dennis's offer, use the money to pay rent, keep treading water for another month. That's what survival looked like these days, 1 month at a time, never getting ahead, just trying not to drown. But something about the gem workshop nagged at her. Maybe it was the way Dennis had been so quick with his offer. Maybe it was the articles about Jenson's success before his fall. Maybe it was just desperation dressed up as intuition. Or maybe it was the way her great-aunt Way used to tell stories about hidden value, about looking beneath surfaces. "The best jade," she'd say, running her wrinkled fingers over a bracelet worn smooth with age, "looks like ugly stone until someone with eyes bothers to look closer." Sarah pulled out a notebook and started making a list. She needed to see the property herself, needed to understand what she'd actually bought for $1. If nothing else, maybe there was scrap metal she could sell, or salvageable materials worth something. The next morning, Sarah dropped Lily at school. The girl gave her an extra tight hug, as if sensing her mother's stress, then took 2 buses to reach Industrial Park Road. The journey took 90 minutes, winding through parts of Riverside that Prosperity had forgotten decades ago. The gem workshop sat at the end of a potholed road, surrounded by chain-link fence that had mostly fallen over. Sarah stood at what used to be the entrance, key in hand, trying to reconcile the romantic image she'd built in her head with the grim reality before her. The building was worse than the photos suggested. Black scorch marks climbed the stone walls where the fire had raged. The roof sagged dangerously in the middle, some sections completely caved in. Every window was either boarded up or broken, giving the place the appearance of a skull with dark, hollow eyes. She approached slowly, stepping carefully over debris, broken glass, rotted wood, unidentifiable metal pieces turned to rust. The front door hung crooked on its hinges, padlocked but clearly forced open multiple times over the years. Sarah could see where the wood had been pried apart, where vandals or squatters had broken in. The key slid into the lock smoothly. Too smoothly, like someone had used it recently. The padlock clicked open, and Sarah pushed the door. It groaned on rusty hinges, swinging inward into darkness. The smell hit her first, a mixture of mildew, old smoke, and something chemical she couldn't identify. Sarah pulled out her phone, using its flashlight to illuminate the interior. The beam cut through dust that hung in the air like fog, particles swirling in the light. She stepped inside carefully, testing each floorboard before putting her full weight down. The main room had clearly been the retail showroom. She could see the outline of where display cases had stood, could make out the shapes of shelves on the walls. Everything valuable had been stripped away long ago, leaving only the bones of what had been. A staircase led up to what must have been a second floor, but Sarah didn't trust it. She could see daylight through gaps where the roof had collapsed, could see water damage staining the walls. Instead, She moved deeper into the ground floor, following a corridor that led to the back of the building. The smoke damage was worse here, walls blackened, ceiling tiles collapsed. But she could see evidence of what the workshop had been, workbenches still bolted to the floor, industrial sinks crusted with chemicals, the mounting brackets where equipment had once been secured. She found the finishing studio in the back corner, a smaller room with reinforced walls and what looked like the remains of a ventilation system. This must have been where Jenson did the actual cutting and polishing, where rough stones became finished gems. The room was eerily intact compared to the rest of the building. The walls were stone, maybe concrete, and had survived the fire mostly unscathed. Sarah's flashlight beam swept across the floor, catching on something that made her pause. Boot prints in the dust. Fresh ones, crossing the room and stopping at the far wall. Her heart rate kicked up. Someone had been here recently. Very recently. Sarah followed the prints to where they stopped. The wall looked solid, just concrete and old paint peeling away in sheets. But when she pressed her palm against it, she felt something odd, a slight give, almost imperceptible. She ran her fingers along the seam where wall met floor, found a gap barely wide enough to slide a fingernail into. When she pulled, a section of the wall swung outward an inch before catching on something. Sarah's hands were shaking now. This was deliberate, designed. A hidden panel built into the wall itself. She pulled harder, heard something crack, and the panel swung fully open, revealing darkness beyond. Her flashlight beam penetrated about 6 feet into what looked like a small room, maybe 8 by 10, carved into the foundation itself. And there, against the back wall, she saw them. Shelves. Metal shelves lined with plastic containers, the kind with secure lids and labels. Sarah's breath came faster. She stepped through the opening, had to duck slightly because the ceiling was lower. Her flashlight swept across the nearest container, and she read the label written in neat, precise handwriting, Lightning Ridge Black Opal. Rough. 4.2 kilograms. Acquired 1988. Her hands trembled as she opened the container. Inside, wrapped in what looked like archival tissue paper, were stones. Raw opals, their surfaces dull and unremarkable until she shifted one in the light and saw it, that sudden flash of color, like rainbow fire trapped in stone. She opened another container. Mexican fire opal. Cut stones. Various sizes. Market ready. Another. Ethiopian Wellow opal. AAA grade. 2.8 kilograms rough. Another. 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 The shelves held dozens of containers. Sarah's mind couldn't process it, couldn't calculate what she was looking at. She knew nothing about opals, about gems, but she knew enough to recognize that Thomas Jenson hadn't lost everything after all. He'd hidden it. Her phone buzzed, making her jump. A text from her supervisor at the grocery store, "Need you to come in early tomorrow. 6 a.m. shift available if you want it." Sarah stared at the message, then at the shelves full of stones, then back at her phone. The juxtaposition was surreal, being asked to work for minimum wage while standing in a room full of what might be a fortune in gemstones. She took photos, trying to document everything systematically despite her shaking hands. Then she carefully closed the containers, arranged them back on the shelves exactly as she'd found them, and backed out of the hidden room. Before she left, she dragged a piece of plywood across the entrance, trying to conceal it. The boot prints in the dust worried her. Someone else knew about this place, had been here recently looking for something. Outside, the November sun felt too bright, too normal. Sarah walked back to the bus stop in a daze, trying to think, trying to plan. She needed to figure out what she actually had, what it was worth, who she could trust. The bus ride home took forever. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities, each one more overwhelming than the last. If those stones were valuable, really valuable, then Dennis Horvath's $500 offer suddenly made terrible, revealing sense. Someone knew what Jenson had hidden. Someone had been looking for it. And now Sarah had found it first. Back at the apartment, she had 3 hours before Lily got out of school. She spent them on her laptop, searching for information about opals, about gem values, about what AAA-grade Ethiopian wello might actually mean. The numbers she found made her dizzy. Black opals from Lightning Ridge could sell for thousands of dollars per carat. High-grade rough stones could be worth even more to the right buyers. And Jenson's collection, if the labels were accurate, included several kilograms of material. She found a forum for gem collectors and posted a carefully worded question: if someone inherited a gem cutting workshop, what would be the best way to have inventory authenticated and appraised? Responses came within minutes. Contact GIA, Gemological Institute of America. Find a reputable auction house with gemstone specialists. Be careful, there are a lot of scammers in this industry. Don't trust anyone who offers to buy sight unseen. Sarah was still reading responses when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Chen? The voice was male, older, with an accent she couldn't place. My name is Peter Castellanos. I'm calling regarding the property you purchased yesterday. The former Jenson workshop. Sarah's stomach tightened. How did you get this number? Auction house gave it to me. I hope you don't mind, I'm a gemstone dealer, have been for 40 years. Thomas Jenson was a colleague of mine, back in the day. He paused. I heard you bought his workshop. I was wondering if you'd found anything of interest in the building. The lie came easily, smoothly. Just empty rooms and water damage. Why? Another pause, longer this time. Thomas and we had some business dealings before he died. There were some materials he owed me, inventory from a shipment we'd split years ago. I'd been trying to reach the estate, but no one ever returned my calls. I'm sorry, Sarah said, keeping her voice neutral. But I haven't found anything like that. The place was pretty thoroughly stripped. I see. He didn't sound convinced. Well, if you do come across any gemstones, opals specifically, I'd be happy to take them off your hands. Save you the trouble of trying to sell them yourself. Raw opals are tricky, you need the right contacts, the right expertise. I'll keep that in mind, Sarah said. Thank you for calling. She hung up before he could say more. Her hands were shaking again. That made two people, Dennis and now this Castellanos, who were suspiciously interested in a condemned building supposedly worth nothing. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Sarah sat at the table with a notepad, trying to think strategically. She needed help, needed expertise she didn't have. But who could she trust? The answer came from an unexpected place. She remembered Mrs. Kowalski, her third-grade teacher, who'd always been kind even when Sarah showed up to school in clothes that didn't quite fit, with lunch boxes that were often empty. Mrs. Kowalski had given her books, had encouraged her, had once said something that stuck: smart people aren't the ones who know everything. They're the ones who know who to ask. Sarah pulled up the Riverside Public Library website. Listed under Special Collections and Research Services was a name: Dr. Helena Nash, Geological Sciences Specialist. She sent an email. Dr. Nash, my name is Sarah Chen. I recently acquired a property that appears to contain gemstone materials. I'm trying to understand what I have and how to proceed responsibly. Would you be available for a consultation? I can't afford standard appraisal fees, but I'm willing to work out an arrangement. She hit send before she could overthink it, then got ready for bed. Sleep didn't come easily. Every sound in the old building made her jump, imagining Dennis or Castellanos or whoever had left those boot prints in the dust, coming for what they knew was hidden in that workshop. The next morning brought a reply from Dr. Nash. Miss Chen, I'd be happy to discuss your situation. I have office hours at the library tomorrow afternoon, 2 to 4 p.m. No fee required, part of my role is public education and consultation. Please bring any documentation you have about the materials. Best regards, Helena Nash. Sarah read the email 3 times, hardly believing her luck. She texted her supervisor at the diner, begging to switch her afternoon shift to morning. For once, the answer was yes. That afternoon, Sarah took the bus to Riverside Central Library, a beautiful old building with marble floors and high ceilings that smelled like old books and possibility. Dr. Nash's office was on the third floor, a small room crammed with rock samples and reference books. Dr. Nash herself was in her 60s, with steel gray hair pulled back in a practical bun and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked up when Sarah knocked, smiled warmly, and gestured to a chair. "Sarah Chen? Come in, please. Coffee?" She indicated a pot brewing on a hot plate. "Yes, thank you." Sarah sat, suddenly nervous. She'd brought her phone with the photos, had practiced what she'd say, but now her mind went blank. Dr. Nash seemed to sense her hesitation. She poured 2 cups of coffee, added sugar to both without asking, and settled into her chair with the comfortable patience of someone used to working with skittish students. "So," she said gently, "tell me what you found." Sarah started haltingly, then with growing confidence. She explained the auction, the dollar bid, the hidden room. She pulled up the photos on her phone, zoomed in on the labels, on the stones themselves. Dr. Nash's expression shifted as she looked. The polite professional interest became something sharper, more focused. She took Sarah's phone, studied each photo carefully, occasionally making soft sounds, and interesting, and once, very quietly, "Oh my." Finally, she set the phone down and looked at Sarah directly. "Do you understand what you have? I was hoping you could tell me." Dr. Nash pulled out a notepad. "Based on these labels and what I can see in the photos, you found Thomas Jenson's collection. The collection everyone assumed he'd sold off during his bankruptcy." She tapped the photo showing the black opals. "Lightning ridge material like this, if it's actually what it claims to be, that's extraordinarily valuable. Black opal is the rarest, most valuable type. A single high-quality stone can sell for tens of thousands of dollars." Sarah's mouth went dry. "How much do you think the whole collection is worth?" "Without proper examination and authentication, I can't give you an exact figure." Dr. Nash's voice was careful, precise. "But if these materials are authentic and of the quality the labels suggest, and if the quantities are accurate, you could be looking at several $1,000,000. Possibly much more." The office seemed to tilt sideways. Sarah gripped the arms of her chair. "Several million. Opals are unique in the gemstone market. A single exceptional stone can command extraordinary prices. And Jenson was known for his eye, he didn't acquire mediocre material." Dr. Nash leaned forward. "But Sarah, this is important, you need to be extremely careful. The gemstone world can be predatory. There are people who will try to take advantage of you, who will offer you a fraction of what this is worth." "People have already started calling," Sarah admitted. "Wanting to buy. Don't sell anything yet. Not until you have proper authentication and appraisal from multiple sources." Dr. Nash pulled out a business card, wrote on the back. "This is a colleague of mine, Meredith Zhao. She's a certified gemologist in Seattle, specializes in opals. If you can get some samples to her, she can give you a proper assessment." "I can't afford." "She'll do the initial assessment pro bono if I ask her to. We go way back." Dr. Nash smiled. "Sarah, if what you've found is real, you're going to need allies. People who care more about the stones than the money. We do exist, believe it or not." Sarah felt tears threatening. She blinked them back. "Why are you helping me?" Dr. Nash was quiet for a moment, looking at something far away. "I knew Thomas Jenson. Not well, but we met at conferences over the years. He was brilliant, passionate about opals in a way that was almost spiritual. When he went bankrupt, everyone assumed it was because he'd made bad investments, been careless." She met Sarah's eyes. But Thomas wasn't careless. He was paranoid, actually. Used to joke about hiding his best stones where no one would think to look. "You think he hid them deliberately?" "I think someone forced him into bankruptcy. Someone who wanted his collection and thought they could get it by ruining him financially." Dr. Nash's expression hardened. And I think that same someone is probably very interested in why a single mother just bought his workshop for $1. The words hung in the air between them, a warning and a promise both. Sarah left the library with Dr. Nash's phone number, a list of people to contact, and a growing understanding that she'd stumbled into something far more complex than a simple inheritance. On the bus ride home, she Googled Thomas Jenson's bankruptcy, found the court documents. The bankruptcy filing listed multiple creditors, but one jumped out: Horvath Development LLC. Dennis Horvath's company had been owed $200,000 for property development and consultation services. Sarah felt cold. Dennis hadn't just happened to hear about the auction. He'd been involved in Jenson's bankruptcy, had maybe even helped orchestrate it. Her phone buzzed. Text from Dennis, still interested in buying that property. $600, final offer. Think about your daughter, what's really best for her. The mention of Lily made Sarah's blood run cold. She blocked the number immediately, heart hammering. Another text, this one from an unknown number: Miss Chen, Peter Castellanos again. I must insist we discuss the Jenson materials. I have documentation proving some of those stones belong to me legally. We can do this the easy way or the difficult way. Sarah deleted it without responding, but her hands shook as she put the phone away. At school pickup, Lily ran to her with a drawing, a picture of their apartment, but with flowers growing in the windows and a sun in the corner. I made it pretty, Mama. Like how we're going to make everything pretty. Sarah hugged her daughter tight, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and that particular little kid smell that wouldn't last much longer. It's beautiful, baby. Let's go home. That night, Sarah moved fast. She gathered what valuables they had, not much, but enough to pawn if needed, and packed an emergency bag with clothes, documents, Lily's favorite stuffed animal. She took photos of the hidden room's contents more carefully this time, documenting every label, every container. Then she sealed everything in a large envelope and mailed it to Dr. Nash with a note: in case something happens to me, please make sure these get authenticated. Make sure the truth comes out. The next 3 days passed in a blur of anxiety and anticipation. Sarah went to work, picked up Lily, tried to maintain normalcy while constantly looking over her shoulder. Dennis is blocked. Number tried calling twice more. Castellanos left a voicemail that was professionally threatening, all polite words wrapped around implications that made Sarah's skin crawl. On Friday morning, Dr. Nash called. Meredith received your samples. Sarah, I need you to sit down. Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, phone pressed to her ear. What is it? The black opal samples you sent, they're legitimate Lightning Ridge material, and they're museum quality. The kind of stones that get sold at Sotheby's, not local gem shows. Dr. Nash's voice was carefully controlled. Meredith estimates those particular samples alone could fetch upward of $800,000 at auction. And they represent maybe 2% of what's in those photos. Sarah couldn't speak. The number was too big, too impossible. Sarah, are you there? I'm here. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Meredith wants to come out next week with a full assessment team. She's connected with Macklin's auction house in New York. They specialize in exceptional gemstones. They can handle the sale properly, get you market value. Dr. Nash paused. But Sarah, you need to understand something. When word gets out about this, it's going to be chaotic. People are going to come out of the woodwork with claims and stories. You need legal protection. I can't afford. Meredith knows an attorney who specializes in inheritance cases involving valuable materials. Maria Sanchez. She's taken cases pro bono before when the situation warrants it. I've already spoken to her about you. She's willing to help. Sarah's eyes burned with tears she couldn't quite hold back. Why is everyone being so kind? Because Thomas Jenson deserved better than what happened to him. And because sometimes, just sometimes, the right person finds the treasure. Dr. Nash's voice softened. You bought that building when everyone else walked away. You looked when everyone said there was nothing to see. That's not luck, Sarah. That's courage. After they hung up, Sarah sat for a long time, staring at nothing. Then she pulled up her text messages and sent one to her landlord: "I'll have rent paid in full by Monday." That weekend, Sarah finally told Lily the truth, or at least a version of it appropriate for a 7-year-old. They sat on the small balcony outside their apartment, sharing a pizza Sarah had splurged on, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and gold. "You know how we bought that old building?" Sarah said carefully. Lily nodded, mouth full of cheese. "Well, I found something inside. Something the man who used to own it left behind." She pulled out her phone, showed Lily one of the photos of an opal catching light. "See how pretty? These are very special stones. They're worth a lot of money." Lily's eyes went wide. "Like treasure?" "Exactly like treasure. So we're going to be rich?" The hope in her voice was heartbreaking in its simplicity. "Maybe," Sarah said honestly. "But it's going to take time, and we have to be very careful. There are people who want to take this away from us. People who think they deserve it more than we do." Lily thought about this, her face serious in that way children get when they're trying to understand adult problems. "But you found it. That means it's yours." "That's right, baby. Then we'll protect it. Like knights protecting treasure from dragons." Lily nodded decisively. "I can help. I'm very brave." Sarah pulled her daughter close, kissed the top of her head. "You're the bravest person I know." Monday morning arrived cold and clear. Sarah had arranged to take the day off, unpaid, but necessary. Meredith Zhao arrived from Seattle with 2 assistants, all 3 carrying equipment cases that looked expensive and professional. They met at the Gem Workshop at 8 a.m. Maria Sanchez, the attorney, was already there, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and the bearing of someone who didn't take shit from anyone. "Sarah Chen?" She extended her hand. "Dr. Nash has told me about your situation. Before we go inside, I need you to understand something. Whatever is in that building belongs to you legally. You purchased the property and all its contents. Anyone who claims otherwise will need to prove their claim in court, and I'm going to make damn sure they can't." The vote of confidence steadied Sarah's nerves. They approached the building together, and Sarah led them through to the hidden room. When she pulled away the plywood covering the entrance, Meredith Zhao gasped. "Oh my God," she whispered, stepping inside. Dr. Nash wasn't exaggerating. For the next 6 hours, they documented everything. Each container was opened, photographed, cataloged. Meredith examined stones with equipment Sarah didn't understand, made notes in technical language that flew over her head. Finally, as afternoon light slanted through the broken windows, Meredith sat back on her heels in the hidden room, surrounded by open containers and glittering stones, and looked at Sarah with an expression somewhere between awe and disbelief. "In 30 years of working with gemstones, I have never seen a private collection like this." Her voice was shaky. "Not even close. Sarah, this is museum-caliber material. The kind of opals people write papers about, that get exhibited internationally." "How much?" Sarah's voice came out as a croak. Meredith exchanged glances with her assistants. "Conservative estimate, assuming we can authenticate everything and that market conditions remain stable, you're looking at a minimum of $415 million. The number hit Sarah like a physical blow. Maria grabbed her arm, steadied her. $415 million, Meredith repeated. "That's conservative. At auction, with the right buyers, could be significantly more." Sarah's legs gave out. She sat heavily on the floor, back against the concrete wall. "That's not real. That can't be real." "It's real." Meredith moved to sit beside her. Thomas Jenson was one of the finest gem cutters of his generation, and he spent 50 years acquiring the best material he could find. This collection represents decades of expert curation. And someone, probably the same people who forced him into bankruptcy, has been trying to get their hands on it ever since he died. "Dennis Horvath," Sarah said. "And a man named Peter Castellanos." Maria was already taking notes. Tell me everything. So Sarah did. The phone calls, the threats disguised as concern, the boot prints in the dust. Maria listened intently, asking sharp questions, building a picture of what they were dealing with. Okay, Maria said when Sarah finished. Here's what we're going to do. First, we secure this location properly. I'm talking 24-hour security, cameras, the works. Second, we file paperwork with the court confirming your ownership and putting everyone on notice that the contents are claimed. Third, we contact law enforcement about the harassment you've been experiencing. And fourth, Meredith added, we start the authentication process through Macklin's. I've already spoken to their director. They're prepared to offer you a comprehensive service, appraisal, sale, and legal protection, all on contingency. They only get paid when you do. Sarah looked around the hidden room at the fortune Thomas Jenson had preserved, at the stones that gleamed with trapped fire when they caught the light. Why did he hide it? Why not just sell it and live comfortably? Because he knew what you're learning now, Maria said quietly. That having something valuable makes you a target. That sometimes the only way to protect something is to make everyone think it's already lost. The rest of the week passed in a controlled frenzy. Maria filed the necessary paperwork. Security was installed, 2 guards rotating 24-hour coverage of the workshop. Meredith began the detailed authentication process, bringing in specialists for different types of stones. And the phone calls started. Dennis Horvath left a voicemail, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. You have something that doesn't belong to you. Thomas Jenson owed me money. I have a legal claim to that collection. Peter Castellanos was more direct. Miss Chen, I warned you. I have documentation proving Thomas and I were partners. Half of those stones are mine. I'll see you in court if I have to. 3 other callers claimed to be Jenson's long-lost relatives, each with increasingly implausible stories about why they deserved a share. Maria handled them all with cold efficiency. Any claims must go through proper legal channels. My client will not be responding to unsolicited calls or threats. The local newspaper got wind of the story. Someone leaked it, probably Dennis or one of his allies trying to put public pressure on Sarah. The headline read, Single Mother's Dollar Bid Uncovers Possible Fortune in Gems. Overnight, Sarah became famous. Or infamous, depending on who you asked. The comments section of the online article was brutal. Who does she think she is? Probably stole it. Someone should investigate this. Something's not right. That treasure belongs to the city, not some welfare mom who got lucky. But there were other voices too. Good for her. Tired of rich people thinking they deserve everything. Maybe this is karma, the people who need it most finally getting a break. Lily came home from school crying because some kids had been teasing her, saying her mom was a thief. Sarah held her daughter while rage and helplessness warred in her chest. This was the cost of treasure, not just the threats from people like Dennis, but the judgment from everyone else who couldn't believe someone like her deserved something good. That night, Sarah sat in the apartment she still hadn't left despite everything, looking at the eviction notice that was now meaningless, at the pile of bills that would soon be paid, and felt no joy. Just exhaustion and a bone-deep weariness that maybe this treasure was more curse than blessing. Her phone rang. Dr. Nash. Sarah, I've been following the news. How are you holding up? I don't know. Sarah's voice cracked. This was supposed to make everything better, but people hate me now. They think I'm some kind of con artist or that I don't deserve it. Of course they think that. Dr. Nash's voice was gentle but firm. Because your existence challenges their worldview. You're supposed to stay poor, stay struggling. The script doesn't include single mothers finding fortunes. So they have to convince themselves you're a villain because otherwise they'd have to examine their own assumptions about who deserves wealth and why. The words settled something in Sarah's chest. I didn't do anything wrong. No, you didn't. You took a chance when everyone said you were foolish. You looked when everyone said there was nothing to see. You persisted when everyone said to give up. That's not luck, Sarah. That's character. After they hung up, Sarah made a decision. She opened her laptop and started typing, a statement she'd post on social media, for anyone who cared to read it. My name is Sarah Chen. 3 weeks ago, I bought a condemned building for $1 because it was the only property I could afford. I've been mocked, threatened, and told I'm stupid for not taking lowball offers from people who knew what I'd found before I did. Yes, I discovered valuable gemstones hidden in that building. No, I didn't steal them. They came with the property I legally purchased. Am I going to sell them? Yes. Am I going to use that money to give my daughter the life she deserves? Absolutely. To everyone who says I don't deserve this, you're right. I don't deserve it any more than I deserve to work 3 jobs and still not be able to pay rent. I don't deserve it any more than my daughter deserved to go to bed hungry. Deserve has nothing to do with it. This is what happened. And I'm not going to apologize for it. To the people who've helped me, Dr. Nash, Meredith Zhao, Maria Sanchez, and others, thank you for seeing me as a person, not just a problem. You've shown me that not everyone in this world is out to take what little others have. And to my daughter, Lily, this is all for you. Every penny, every stone, every moment of this chaos. You're worth more than all the opals in the world. She posted it before she could second-guess herself, then closed the laptop. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of shares, hundreds of comments. Most supportive now that they had a face and story to connect with. Some still cruel, but their voices were drowned out by people saying good for her and finally someone catches a break and this gives me hope. The next morning, Maria called with news. Dennis Horvath just filed a lawsuit claiming he has first right to purchase the property at the original bankruptcy auction price. He's arguing that the auction was fraudulent, that the county had no right to sell without clearing his alleged claims first. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Can he win? Not a chance. The bankruptcy was finalized 8 years ago. He had his opportunity to make claims then. He's just trying to intimidate you. Maria's voice was confident. Let him waste his money on legal fees. Judge will throw it out in the first hearing. Peter Castellanos filed his own suit the same day, claiming he and Jenson had been partners and that half the collection belonged to him. His lawyers produced contracts from the 1980s showing joint ventures in opal acquisition. Maria reviewed them and laughed. These contracts expired in 1995. Even if they were still valid, which they're not, they only covered material acquired during their partnership, not Jenson's personal collection. Another waste of everyone's time. But the lawsuits had their intended effect. Macklin's auction house called to say they needed to postpone the sale until legal ownership was absolutely confirmed. We can't risk putting disputed materials up for auction. Once the courts clear these claims, we'll proceed immediately. But Sarah, be prepared, this could take months. Months. Sarah hung up and looked around her apartment, at the bills still unpaid, at the eviction notice that had been temporarily stayed but not dismissed. She'd found a fortune but couldn't touch it yet. She was wealthy on paper and broke in reality. That afternoon, Sarah made a decision. She called the security company and added an additional measure, cameras inside the hidden room itself, recording 24/7, backed up to cloud storage. If someone managed to break in and take the stones, at least there would be evidence. Then she did something that surprised even herself. She called Dennis Horvath. He answered on the first ring. Miss Chen. Have you reconsidered my offer? No, Sarah said, keeping her voice steady. I'm calling to tell you I know what you did. I know you forced Thomas Jenson into bankruptcy. I know you've been trying to find his collection for 8 years. And I want you to know that I'm not afraid of you. Silence on the other end. Then, you're making a mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. She hung up before he could respond. Lily came home from school with a drawing, a picture of a dragon being defeated by a small knight with a sword. That's you, Mama. You're the knight. Sarah put the drawing on the refrigerator with a magnet, next to the eviction notice and the past due bills and the photo of the opals that represented a future neither of them could quite imagine yet. That evening, as they ate dinner, ramen again, but with vegetables this time, a small luxury, Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Miss Chen?" The voice was elderly, female, with a heavy accent Sarah couldn't place. "My name is Eva Jensen. Thomas was my brother." Sarah's heart skipped. "I thought he didn't have any family." "Everyone thought that. We had a falling out years ago." Stopped speaking. Eva's voice trembled slightly. "I only just heard about the collection. About you finding it. I'm not calling to make a claim. I just wanted to tell you something about my brother." Sarah waited. Thomas spent his whole life with those stones. He loved them the way some people love art or music. They meant everything to him. Eva took a shaky breath. When his business failed, it wasn't carelessness. Dennis Horvath and Peter Castellanos, they were circling like vultures. They wanted his collection, and when he wouldn't sell, they manufactured debt, paid off inspectors to condemn his building, pushed him into bankruptcy thinking they could take everything. Why didn't he fight back? He did, in his way. He hid the stones where no one would think to look. He knew eventually someone would buy the workshop, someone who might actually look at it with fresh eyes instead of assumptions. Eva laughed, a sound full of sadness and pride both. "My brother always said the best treasures are the ones nobody believes in until they're already found." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to know that Thomas would be happy it's you who found them. Not some wealthy collector or corporation, but someone who needed them. Someone who looked when everyone else walked away." Eva paused. "Don't let them take this from you, Sarah. Thomas spent 8 years protecting those stones from people who only saw dollar signs. You see something different. I can tell." After they hung up, Sarah sat for a long time, thinking about Thomas Jensen. A man who'd lost everything but had managed, in the end, to pass his treasure to someone who understood what it meant to have nothing. The legal battle stretched into December. Dennis's lawsuit was dismissed as expected, but he immediately filed an appeal. Castellanos produced more documents, all of them dubious, none of them holding up under Maria's scrutiny. "They're stalling," Maria explained. "Hoping you'll get tired, desperate, settle for less just to make it go away. Don't give in. We're winning." But winning felt like losing when Christmas approached and Sarah was still cleaning toilets at 5 a.m., still working 3 jobs, still counting pennies. The treasure sat locked in a hidden room, guarded but untouchable, while her life remained stubbornly, exhaustingly the same. Lily asked for one thing for Christmas, a doll she'd seen advertised on TV, with long hair and fancy clothes and accessories that cost more than Sarah usually spent on groceries. Sarah looked at her daughter's hopeful face and said, "Maybe, sweetheart. We'll see." The words tasted like ash. She'd found $415 million in gemstones and couldn't buy her daughter a $40 doll. That night, Dr. Nash called. "Sarah, Meredith has news. She's fast-tracked authentication of a small portion of the collection, enough to establish provenance and value for immediate sale. Macklin's can sell those pieces privately within 30 days. She's estimating you could clear $15 million from just that portion while the rest of the legal issues get resolved." Sarah couldn't breathe. 15 million? It's a start. And more importantly, it establishes market value for the rest of the collection. Makes Dennis and Castellanos' claims look even more ridiculous. They're saying they're owed money for a collection they claimed didn't exist or wasn't valuable. On December 15th, exactly 1 month after Sarah had walked into that hidden room for the first time, Maria called. The judge just ruled on Castellanos' motion. She dismissed it with prejudice and sanctioned his attorney for filing frivolous claims. That's legal speak for this was bullshit and you knew it. 2 days later, Dennis's appeal was denied. Maria's voice rang with triumph. Both cases are dead. The collection is legally yours, no disputes, no encumbrances. Macklin's is clear to proceed with the sale. Sarah hung up and immediately burst into tears. Lily ran to her, worried, and Sarah pulled her close. Happy tears, baby. These are happy tears. So the dragons are gone? The dragons are gone. On December 23rd, Sarah received confirmation of a wire transfer. $15,300,000. The private sale had gone through. She stared at her bank app, at the number that didn't seem real, couldn't be real. Then she called her landlord. This is Sarah Chen in Unit 317. I'm giving 30 days notice. I'll be moving out in January. Next she called the principal at Lily's school. Hi, this is Lily Chen's mother. I'd like to pay off her lunch account. And actually, I'd like to pay off the lunch accounts for every student who's negative. Can you tell me what that total would be? The principal's voice was stunned. Miss Chen, that's very generous, but it's over $8,000. That's fine. I'll have it transferred today. Then she called Meredith. I want to donate one of the smaller opals to a museum. Nothing huge, just something pretty that people can look at and understand why Thomas Jenson loved these stones so much. Can you make that happen? Sarah, you don't have to. I know. But I want to. He protected these stones for 8 years so they'd end up with someone who'd appreciate them. I want people to appreciate them the way he did. That Christmas, Sarah and Lily woke up in their cramped apartment for the last time. Under a small tree Sarah had finally been able to afford, there were presents, real presents, not from the donation bin or bought on clearance in October. The doll Lily had wanted. Books. Clothes that actually fit. And for Sarah, from Lily, a drawing of the two of them standing in front of the gem workshop, the building restored and beautiful, flowers growing all around. I know we're moving to a nicer place, Lily said, watching her mother cry over the drawing. But I wanted you to remember where we started. Where you found the treasure. I'll keep this forever, Sarah whispered. Forever. In January, they moved into a small house in a good neighborhood with a yard and a garage and enough space that Lily didn't have to sleep in a curtain corner anymore. Sarah quit 2 of her 3 jobs, kept the one at the diner, not because she needed the money but because she'd come to like the regularity, the sense of purpose, the way cooking for others grounded her. The rest of the collection sold at auction in March. The event made international news, $428 million total, exceeding even Meredith's optimistic estimates. Sarah became, overnight, one of the wealthiest women in the state. The phone calls started immediately. Investment advisors, financial planners, charity foundations, distant relatives she'd never heard of. Sarah hired a screening service and only took calls from people she actually wanted to talk to. One of those calls came from Eva Jensen. I saw the auction results. Thomas would be proud. Thank you. Sarah paused. I'm setting up a scholarship fund. For kids who are struggling, who need help but don't fit the usual categories. I'm calling it the Thomas Jenson Memorial Fund. I hope that's okay. Eva's voice broke. He would have loved that. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for seeing the man he was, not just what he left behind. In April, Sarah stood in front of the gem workshop she'd bought for $1. The renovation was almost complete. She'd hired contractors to restore it properly, turning it into a community center focused on helping single parents. Job training, childcare, resume workshops, interview clothing, emergency funds for utilities and rent. The sign out front read, Jenson Gem Community Center. Because everyone deserves a second look. Dr. Nash came to the opening ceremony, as did Maria and Meredith. They stood together watching as families streamed in, taking in the space that had once been dark and dangerous and was now bright with possibility. You did good, Dr. Nash said quietly. We did good, Sarah corrected. None of this happens without you. Ah, but I didn't find the stones. I just helped you understand what you'd found. Sarah thought about that first day, standing in front of the workshop while everyone laughed, while Dennis Horvath suggested it might collapse on her, while the whole town dismissed her as foolish and desperate. Thank you for not thinking I was crazy, she said finally. For believing there might be something worth finding. Dr. Nash smiled. Thank you for looking when everyone else walked away. For having the courage to be foolish. That evening, Sarah and Lily stood on their back porch watching the sunset. Lily held the opal Meredith had given her, nothing huge, just a small Australian stone that caught light like captured fire. Is this what happy feels like? Lily asked. All the time? No, baby. Happy is moments. Like this one. Sarah pulled her daughter close. But we get to have more of these moments now. That's the real treasure. Not the opals. The opals bought us time. Peace. Safety. But the treasure is you and me, still together, still fighting. Sarah kissed the top of her daughter's head. The treasure is that we looked when everyone said there was nothing to see. And we were right. They stood together as the sky turned from gold to amber to deep purple. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Sarah knew better than to think wealth solved everything. But tonight, in this moment, they had what they'd never had before, enough. Enough food, enough space, enough security to breathe without fear. And that, Sarah thought, watching Lily examine her opal in the fading light, that was worth more than all the gemstones in the world. The phone rang inside. Sarah ignored it. Whoever it was could wait. For now, she had everything that mattered, her daughter safe and warm, a future that looked like possibility instead of despair, and the knowledge that sometimes, just sometimes, the people everyone counted out turned out to be the ones who saw what no one else could see. She'd bought a workshop for $1 and found $415 million in hidden opals. But the real treasure had been the courage to look in the first place. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.